Flood. Todd talks about the big legal cases in the news, both locally and around the country. Todd brings you the judges, attorneys, and other special guests who know our current legal system inside and out and how to navigate it. Now here's Todd Flood.
Behind the bench, a great show tonight. I got to tell you, we are very fortunate. We have back with us one of my mentors, one of my go-to guys whenever I'm in a jam or need some sage advice or someone to give me some wisdom. We have Steve Fishman. I got to tell you, I'm going to ask him one of the questions: who would you have on Mount Rushmore if we had lawyers and judges in the city of Detroit on with a Mount Rushmore? I'm picking Fish. He's going to be in the top 4. After Fish, we have one of the renowned judges in the city of Detroit. We have Judge David Groner, who left the bench, is now doing facilitations. Actually, we're going to intermingle those guys because they know each other very well. I'm really excited about tonight. We got the face of the firm, a better face than mine. They tell me I got a face for radio, although they're videotaping this thing tonight. We got Maura Battersby with us tonight, and we'll be right back just after this with Behind the Bench. I don't know if you've seen our next guest in court, Steve Fishman. Every young lawyer, every wannabe lawyer should watch this guy. Have you seen him before in court?
I have not. I've seen him at several presentations at federal bar events, but not actually in court.
Truly, I like I said earlier in the intro, if we had a Mount Rushmore and we had to put 4 lawyers up on the hill on the mountaintop, I'm putting him as one of my 4. He's got to be in the top 4.
I will not argue that.
All right. Fish, you with us, my man?
I'm here.
You know, I gotta tell you, and I don't want to get into all the stories, but there's many a times, Maura, I would be going to trial, and I'd be in my drive, like on my drive to Lansing or wherever in a jury trial, and I'd call, hey, Fish, I got this, that, and the other. How would you do the cross-examination? Yeah.
Just real quick.
Oh, yeah. And he would give it to me, and we'd win. True story,
That sounds
Fish.
right.
Yep, that's absolutely true. It probably happened a half a dozen times, and he caught me in all kinds of different positions. He'd be in his car, I'd be in the car.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd be wherever, but I always tried to give him what I thought made some sense. You know, usually it worked.
Yeah, it always works when it comes from you. So let me ask you, just, you know, you've been doing this, I don't want to count the years, too many jury trials to count, too many trials to count. If you had to, you know, and I'm putting you on the spot, I know, but if you had to pick, and you can change your mind, if you had to pick a Mount Rushmore, judges, lawyers in the history of the city of Detroit, where would you go?
Well, I can only go back. I'm in my 53rd year. I'm not going to try to put anybody up there that I didn't practice with or practice in front of, or at least be aware of what they were doing. I suppose I would say 2 lawyers and 2 judges. One lawyer would be David Moran, the Innocence Project. I can't count the number of people that he and his crew have set free who were factually innocent. And think about that, whoever's listening. Think about going to prison for something you did not do and staying there 10, 15, 18, because a lot of times, most of the time, these were murder cases. So I would say David for sure. And then I would put a civil lawyer, and say he's my very good friend, obviously, so I suppose you got to consider that as well. I would say Ben Johnson from Johnson Law, because he has represented all kinds of people who've been screwed over by the world,
God
or by
bless
the
him.
system, or by whatever.
Yep.
And he's been able to hold people to account for it, and he's collected a lot of money for plaintiffs who had been messed over by the system. So I put him up there. The judges, to me, I think we should have one state court judge and one federal court judge. The state court judge is retired Tim Kenny, who we started out literally together back in if you can imagine this, I don't want anybody to laugh, 1971, a mere
We're supposed to laugh.
55 years ago. Tim and I, Bob Morgan, and a few of us, we all joined together in the prosecutor's intern program in the summer. They gave, about 8 of us a chance. We got paid $3 an hour, which is really not that bad in those days.
$3
and
an
I
hour?
was a spy. Yeah, it was about $3 an hour, something like that.
Jeez.
I was a spy. I knew I was going to the defender office, and I think everybody there at the prosecutors knew I was a spy, but I learned a lot. And Tim and I were friends from then on. And, I mean, we're still friends today, even though we don't live in the same area of the country anymore. But he did such a fantastic job about the law and also about the facts and treating people the way people deserve to be treated, no matter what they had done to wind up in front of him. And I don't think there's very many people who practice law or who tried cases against him, which I did when he was still a lawyer, or who practiced in front of him that would quarrel with him being on Mount Rushmore. And from the federal bench, I would say that my very good friend Nancy Edmonds,
Gotta
who
love.
is retiring at the end of March after maybe 33 years, 35 years. She's had cases of every possible stripe, criminal and civil, huge cases. Kwame Kilpatrick's case was one, and just any number of cases. And she, a lot like Tim, very, very bright, ridiculously bright, but treated everybody with respect, never talked down to anybody that appeared before her. And I think that both of them recognize that one of the most important things that judges can do is to treat people with respect, because there's nothing worse, be you a lawyer, or even worse, be you a civilian who's there for some reason testifying as a witness, or civil defendant, criminal defendant. There's nothing worse than having a judge treat that person like that person is less than a person. And Nancy Edmonds has done it for all these years. Tim did it for all those years. I think the two of them are perfect people to join Dave Moran and Ben on the Mount Rushmore of lawyers in the Detroit area.
I got to tell you, so I'm going to go with Tim Kenny, mentor of mine, my very first murder trial in front of him. He has always been someone everyone can lean on. And he said something, if you were a defense attorney or a prosecutor in the criminal world and you drew a blind draw to Tim Kenny, he would always say, people would say, good, right? The
Right.
defense attorney
right.
would say, good, and the prosecutor would say, good, because he knew you got a fair shot. And he was just one of those guys, is one of those guys. I miss him on the bench. I really do.
He was that way in the civil bench too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he was
a great
chief
civil
judge.
judge. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was excellent.
Yeah. And he cared.
Yes. About even things like, first party no fault benefits.
Oh, God forbid. That's a cure for insomnia. Right?
Yes. And he took it real seriously. So it was great.
Well, he
was
read
great.
everything too.
He did.
And he was prepared. I love him dearly. Great friend, good person. I go with him. David Moran, we have innocence projects right now. We have a case in our firm right now, guys, 18 years. Derek Oliver, right?
Unreal.
Unreal. He's in prison. He's innocent. We're working on getting him out. Derek is, it's just a disgusting case. He was in prison and a second homicide happened identical to the one he was convicted of. Anthony Chambers had him out in Washtenaw County, and it was just, I don't want to get into the disgusting part about race, but this was just pure ugliness, and he was convicted for one reason. Second homicide takes place identical identical to the one he was accused of. And obviously he has a good alibi. He wasn't there.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I got to go. I mean, he did, God's work, David Moran. So, I go with that. Then I've tried cases with him. I've worked with him. We've done work together. Um, he's done, I might put him number 5. I could see 4. I could see 4, but he's done some insane, great work. I got to agree with that for the citizens that he's represented, for the plaintiffs he's represented. Who was the other one?
Nancy Edmonds.
Oh, Nancy Edmonds. Yeah. Well, I've been in front of her. She's phenomenal. You can't dispute that. I don't know. That's good. I want to ask you about what advice you would give to young lawyers coming in today. What big changes you see, and what advice you'd give them. We'll be right back just after this with Steve Fishman. I put Steve Fishman on Mount Rushmore. I take Venn off, put Fish on. All right. We'll be right back just after this.
Todd Flood. What are the most important cases being considered? And who are the judges and attorneys who can explain it to you? You've come to the right place. Once again, here's the person bringing it all to you, Todd Flood.
We're back. Link, I don't know if you heard me, but we need flood law mugs. You could. We got one of the top tier lawyers in the state with me, Maura Battersby. Maura, what do you want to know from Fish? That the person that I think is duly should be on the Mount Rushmore. I really believe that. If anyone ever wanted to see cross examination or voir dire or anything doing a trial, you go watch Fish. What questions do you have for Fishman?
You know, I knew about Fish for before I even became an attorney. I heard stories about him, so I'm anxious to get your input on this. What advice do you have for young lawyers who are trying to get into the law, into litigation?
Well, I have my wife and I have two kids who are young lawyers, one at Miller Canfield and one in Chicago at Winston and Strawn. And when you're at a big firm, it's probably the easiest way to do it because you're surrounded by a lot of lawyers who know what they're doing, and also there's a lot of work there to be done. But if you're talking about criminal stuff, I really honestly believe that the only way you can get enough experience to strike out on your own and make a few dollars without having to rely on court assignments is to go to work either at the prosecutor's office or at the defender office. And the reason I say that is it's almost impossible for any young lawyer to get enough cases, particularly cases that are going to go to trial, unless you're either at the prosecutor's office or the defender office. I was fortunate enough to be at the defender office from November 73 to May of 76, like 2.5 years. And during that time, I probably had 30 jury trials and countless bench trials, because in those days there were way more bench trials than there are now. So that when I left the defenders in May of 76 and went out on my own, it wasn't like I hadn't been in the courtroom, and it wasn't like I hadn't seen jurors, and it wasn't like I hadn't picked up things, not just from my own cases, but from being in the courtrooms and watching Norman Lippett or Shelley Halperin or all kinds of Kenny Cockrell. There were all kinds of lawyers that you could watch and you could pick up things from. And I just think it's really difficult to do criminal stuff. Maybe if you can go somewhere like Allison Krieger, who does a fabulous job. She was fortunate because her dad and D-Day had the firm.
Right.
And when she started out, she was there and they had cases for her. And she's had any number of successful jury trials, but it's hard for that to happen if you are somehow out there on your own.
I got to tell you, Allison Krieger is an up and coming star, if not already a star.
Absolutely.
She is
Absolutely.
real. I love her. She's amazing. And I think ultimately is going to be someone that is people are going to go watch her because she does such a great job. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I agree with that. You know, one of the things we talk about and the most important aspect, I don't know about in the civil world as much. I've done several civil trials, but you know, Fish, one of the things that's taken away from us all the time in the criminal world is voir dire. The most important part, I think, anyway, to get credibility with the jury, get it to see, peel back the layers of the onion to see how a jury works. What are you finding right now in the changes of the practice? Are you getting more opportunities to do voir dire?
I think that it's the single thing that has changed the most from when I started back in 1973. In those days, it was assumed. There were only two judges in Recorder's Court that didn't allow voir dire. It was Joseph Gillis and Robert Colombo, the senior Robert Colombo. But Colombo had a voir dire that was good enough that, you could almost, I still didn't like it, but you could almost go in there. I'm not sure why it started. What I've heard from judges who would do it is they would say, well, I want to get it done quicker. And I would tell them, A, I can do it as quick as you can. B, what you're really trying to do in voir dire is find out something about something, right? That's the whole point. And when judges do it, they have their standard group of questions. They don't really question individual people like they should. And at the end of the voir dire, I'll give you a story. I won't tell you who the judge was. One of my good friends in federal court likes to do voir dire himself. And we had a serious case with just a number of issues. And he worked his behind off all day doing voir dire, blah, 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 blah. And then he called us up to the bench off the record and said, oh, well, what do you guys think? And of course, the other lawyers, since it's federal court and it's a federal judge, oh, judge, that was great. It was terrific. It was wonderful. And then he turned to me and I said, you want me to tell you the truth or you want me to tell you a bunch of bullshit? And he said, no, I want the truth. I said, I haven't learned one thing. You've worked your behind off. I see you up there sweating through your suit coat. but I haven't learned one thing that I didn't know beforehand. And he just looked at me, and we laughed, and
Fish can get away with that.
Yeah.
we managed to. Well,
Did you get away with it?
Yeah, exactly. But that's another issue, by the way, in terms of how you talk to judges. You said Groner's going to be on there. I'm sure he'll.
We have him on now. We want to bring him in.
Okay, so here's the thing about that. We're switching gears. Dealing with judges, what most lawyers don't understand is that judges in our area, particularly in our federal bench, they're regular people. When I was practicing in Recorder's Court, they're regular people. They're regular people. They don't want to be treated like they're on a pedestal, other than when you're in court. Then I've never used the phrase "Your Honor" ever in 53 years. Never. I call every judge a judge when we're in court, but I never go, "If Your Honor, please," or "Your Honor, this." I've never, ever said that phrase. I've never had one judge say to me, "Oh, Mr. Fishman, you should be saying Your Honor." Why? Because they prefer to be talked to like regular people. Off the bench, I never call anybody judge, ever. I call them by whatever their first name is. And all of them would rather be treated like that. At least I'm talking about here. We don't have judges here, particularly on the federal bench now, who have their nose up in the air and think something doesn't stink. They like being treated like normal people. And you wind up having a better relationship with judges when you treat them like normal people than if you're scared to ever say anything to them. If a judge says something to me that I think is, dead wrong, I say, Judge, I think that's 180 degrees wrong. What's the worst that's going to happen? The judge tell you to shut up or sit down? They don't. They want to be treated like normal people. And I think a lot of lawyers, young, old, male, female, civil, criminal, they don't recognize that. And I think it's to the detriment of the lawyer, and it's to the detriment of the whole proceeding, because judges just react better when you treat them like normal people. That's my opinion, and obviously a lot of people must not agree, because I see judges in there lawyers in there kissing the judges behind and getting absolutely nowhere.
We'd call that the tuchus. So yes,
yeah, remember?
Right. We have Judge Groner with us. I want to bring him in. Judge, you with us?
I am.
Judge, you are. It's a privilege to have you on. I have two of the most esteemed people in the city on tonight: Steve Fishman, Judge Groner. Judge Groner, we got to get out in a minute, but I want to ask you if you had Mount Rushmore, and you can change your mind on this. I put Fishman on Mount Rushmore in the city of Detroit. Who would you put on as lawyers potentially?
Well, given the fact that I am a part-time judge, which I'm sitting now actually this week, and I'm also a mediator on the side, I have to be very careful as to who I would say. But I will second the motion of putting Steve Fishman up there. Steve Fishman is by far the best criminal defense lawyer that I ever had come in front of me. And we had a very, very, very difficult case many years ago that he was very impressive and had a very serious case dismissed. And the prosecutor's office didn't even appeal because Steve did such a great job on that case. And we don't have time to go into it, but it was a very memorable case. And I was actually blown away by the way he practiced with such respect for witnesses. I mean, he had to go up against police officers and basically call them liars, which they really did, I think, bend the truth at best. But he did it with such respect to everyone. And in fact, even after the case was dismissed by me, the officers, who some of them got into trouble, actually hired Steve to represent them.
Well, that's big. When you beat your opponent, the next thing they do is hire you. That's significant.
For sure.
Yeah. No, without question. Fish, we're out in a minute or 30 seconds here. I got to tell you, I love you. You're one of the best, and that's why you're, to me, deservingly so, a great teacher. You give back to everyone, especially all the young lawyers that go to you for assistance, like me, even though I feel like I'm 150. Love having you on, my man. We'll be right back with Judge Groner just after this.
Behind the Bench with Todd Flood. If it's a question of law and it's in the news, you'll learn about it on Behind the Bench. Once again, here's Todd.
We're back. I got to tell you, I don't know how many years, too many years to remember, but I practiced a lot in front of Judge Groner. You have as well.
I did. I got a lot of chances to do that in civil court.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite days in court, actually, in Judge Groner's courtroom.
There we go. Yeah. Judge, how are you?
I'm great. Let me just say that I remember when you practiced in front of me, Todd. You were an outstanding lawyer, and you always represented your client zealously, whether you were a prosecutor, a defense lawyer, plaintiff lawyer. So, I join many of my colleagues in just saying congratulations on the fact that you have become such a pillar in this legal community. And I think your show means a lot to a lot of people, and I commend you for it. I know you've been doing it a long time, and I think a lot of people appreciate the wisdom that they get from the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Well,
and as to Miss Battersby, an outstanding lawyer, when Maura announced that she was going to your firm, I know the Plunkett they were not happy.
No.
Because she's such an outstanding lawyer, but they were happy if she was happy. And I think many of us thought, wow, what a great opportunity for you, for her. And I know she's doing well, and really enjoys working there. And I think together you two are making such a big difference in the legal community.
I love her. Yeah, no, she's great. Great. She raised the bar at the flood law, many levels. So no, we're honored to have her and leading the firm. So
Thanks, guys.
yeah, well, it goes without
You're
saying.
welcome.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. And you did civil work, obviously. Plaintiff's work or defense work. You did defense work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With
Yeah,
Judge
Maura.
Groner. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was there,
Maura was
every
always-
Friday for
always-
years.
Yeah, we when you come to my court, as you all know, it was more of a relaxed atmosphere, more of a civil atmosphere. Things that I think are important that many times are missing in courtrooms, and I think that the lawyers need to be nicer to each other. It for sure starts with that. Just be nice to each other, because in the end, we're just doing our jobs, and we can advocate, but we shouldn't cross the line.
Amen to that.
Yeah, I've said it many times to our young lawyers at Flood Law that I wish that we could get motion call back in person, just because of how much, I learned by just sitting in courtrooms and seeing how judges ruled on particular issues, and how other lawyers' arguments that worked really well. And I think that's really missing right now from how we're educating the younger lawyers. Judge, do you have anything that you think is missing or that young lawyers need to hear?
Well, I think that's a very, very important. I know that the chief judges are talking about having lawyers come back, not necessarily for motion call, although that is on the table. But I think a lot of courts are having the lawyers come back, and you would know because you're practicing lawyers.
Right.
Right.
And I think one of the things that was those things that you never thought about before COVID was you'd go to motion call, you'd have to run around the building, you'd hit a courtroom, you'd sign in, you'd see a lawyer that you have a case on, you'd go out in the hallway, you'd talk to him or her, and it was like that the whole building. You were taking care of business all over the place. Now they don't have that, and of course the socialization, meeting people in the hallways,
Right.
Yep.
lawyers introducing other lawyers, those things we took for granted. And the young lawyers of today, many of them have never been to a courtroom, and they're really missing the boat, as they say. So something has to be done. I think there will be some movement. There is some movement to perhaps get motion called back in person, although I don't know the status. Even though I'm a visiting judge now, I am not. I'm not in the in as far as what's happening. But I certainly think it's something worth exploring, and I think that the chief judge of Wayne Circuit for sure is talking about it. And we'll see what happens. But I think it may come back to that, which I think would be really good for the young lawyers.
Absolutely. I think there's got to be a hybrid of some sort because you can save a ton of time, obviously, doing it via Zoom and handle, smaller motions on motion call. But when you have an SD motion that's up and you have exhibits and, there's a lot of moving parts, it's so much better to be in person. And, obviously, if you have testimony that's taken on any kind of hearings, those types of things, as opposed to doing that via Zoom is crazy to me. But I can get it, handling the time.
There's a balance there, right? But I agree with you on the bigger emotions. You can just read someone's body language and their energy better, and I find that helps me anticipate what the argument's going to be, or you can
Sure.
tell if the judge's, demeanor shifts a little bit, and you think, "Oh, shoot, I gotta shore up that argument right now before they deny it or whatever." I think you get those cues, in person in a way that you don't online.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
1000%. Yeah.
Yep.
I also have,
Yep.
like, every cell phone of every lawyer I've ever had a motion to compel with. Because
You were there.
because of those motion call days when you had to hope you could meet back at the courtroom at the same time because you were all arguing motions in all of these different courtrooms all over the building.
Right.
So you'd exchange numbers and say, like, "Well, text me when you're done with yours, and I'll meet you back up in Groner's courtroom."
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, I have, I don't know, hundreds of cell phone numbers.
That's great. That's how you make relationships.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So, Judge, you're visiting now on the civil side, and you're doing facilitation/mediations, ADRs. Um, Tell us, the change. I mean, you're doing a lot of work, facilitating cases. Our show's Behind the Bench. You've been working behind the bench now, facilitating for other courts. How is that?
Well, okay, so facilitations are a necessary evil. And what I mean by that is most cases don't go to trial. I think everyone knows that. And the reason is, and there's many reasons, but the cost, the unpredictability of verdicts, the appeals, and it unpredictability and costs can really skyrocket.
Sure.
And therefore, people tend to settle cases, and that's where mediations and mediators actually have a very strong presence with the courts. I never realized that. I will say, a little sad, to say the least, when I left the bench.
For sure.
We were all sad.
But I left, and I made the call to do it, and I didn't know if facilitation was going to be my calling and if I would enjoy it. But the truth is, I always tried to settle cases when I was a judge, and I think that I always urge my civil colleagues in the Tri-County area when I see them, try to settle your cases. It means a lot to the lawyers if you can do it. And some judges do, and some judges don't.
Right.
But I think that when you try to do it as a judge, whether I was in the criminal court or the civil court or the business court, I always try to settle cases. So for me, I had that training when and when I started doing mediations, I realized that where cases really do get done are really not so much in court because there's not as many trials. There's very few trials.
Right.
But it actually is at the ADR. It actually is at the mediation where cases do get settled. And so I do feel like I still, can make a difference and help resolve cases. And to me, that's what gets me up every day is just the thought of I'm going to settle a case today. And that's how I feel every day.
Yeah, but you know what? You were like that with cases when you were on the bench, Judge. I mean, your settlement conferences were awesome and they were productive.
Well, thank you. I always tried. I always try to settle cases. I thought that was my job and part of my job, and so I always tried to do that. So.
We're going to be right back with Judge Groner just after this for our last segment. We'll be right back.
with Todd Flood. If it's a question of law and it's in the news, you'll learn about it on Behind the Bench. Once again, here's Todd.
We're back. You know, I mean, I got to tell you, having Maura here is like a blessing, obviously. Maura, I hear you got something, some call in for the judge or texting for the judge. We got David Groner. Judge Groner is now back on the bench doing part-time visiting judge, and is a facilitator slash mediator slash ADR. So one of the pillars in our community, and one of the great lawyers back in the day, and currently one of the better judges, I will say. It was always an honor being in front of him. So what do you got going over there with text messages to Judge Groner?
Yeah, we have some listener submissions. Are you okay with me asking them to you, Judge Groner?
As long as I don't have to answer everyone, sure.
All right, you can plead the fifth. A caller wants to know what you like best about your wife, her cooking or her intellect.
My wife?
Yeah.
Well, she's like a unicorn.
You're funny.
Would you agree, Mr. Flood?
I agree. She's the unicorn. Yes.
I would also agree.
Yes.
All right, that was just an anonymous submission. We have no idea who submitted it.
You know, I have to tell you, your lovely bride is doing a facilitation for us this week.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
No.
Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday. Very excited. We got to get you into the lineup. Maura's going to be.
She was also a pretty good judge in her day.
She was one of the best.
She's the
You know,
best
I
at
might put her
everything.
on that. I might put her on Mount Rushmore.
You start naming Hathaways, you're going to get in trouble.
That's true. I got to tell you though, yeah, no,
But I mean, yes.
she was
Agreed.
phenomenal. We did a lot of work together when she was in Frank Murphy and I was a prosecutor. So, yeah.
Well aware.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a unicorn. You can go with that.
All right.
Know. Yeah.
Fair answer.
Yeah. So, one of the things, you know, listening public out there, Judge, when you're facilitating a case, like, for example, we turn in briefs, we turn in comps, we go through a serious amount of work that we pass off to you. And then in turn, you know, the defense does as well. Tell the world out there kind of what you go through with both the plaintiffs and the defense, and how you want to try to attempt to resolve. Because I agree with you, good cases don't go to trial because they 90% of the time settle, right? If you have a great plaintiff's case, defense wants to settle. If you have a terrible plaintiff's case, at the end, you know, the plaintiffs want to settle. And it just, you're not. But there's those cases that, yeah, you got to put people in a box and let them decide because, you know, someone's stuck in a way. But tell the listening public out there, you know, what the process is with regards to mediation / facilitation, or how you try to get stuff done and what you have to do, the work you have to put into it.
Okay, very good question. So what happens is the lawyers agree on a facilitator, a mediator, and if they choose me, they'll send me an email. I'll tell them submit the summaries at least a week in advance. And then what I suggest is that don't make it too long, because you want your mediator to read everything.
Right.
So you'll have exhibits, but make your point clearly, succinctly, and both sides need to do that. And remember one thing, when you get to the mediation, the mediator's not trying your case. So as much as one side wants to tell me the other side is totally wrong and is entitled to nothing, and the other side's telling me that they're totally right and they're entitled to millions of dollars, the real challenge is for the mediator to find a sweet spot where both sides may not be happy, but where they will realize that it's the right number to settle on. And I know I'm kind of saying that in a nutshell, but I think the most important thing for people who use a mediator is make sure you don't have other things scheduled when you're doing the mediation, because a lot of times they'll have 2 or 3 things going and they're not focused, and it's difficult to keep them focused, and it takes a little bit longer. But
Right.
when I do a mediation, I don't give up on it. My wife says I'm tenacious because I feel that if both sides come to the mediation and negotiate in good faith, the case will get settled. But
Amen
both
to that.
sides,
Yeah.
both sides have to do that. And many times it doesn't happen that way, but it is a process, and it is the most important thing about a mediation for those out there who are going to do it. It is not binding. It's an opportunity to settle a case. It's an opportunity to see what the other side is willing to pay or is willing to take, depending on whether you're plaintiff or defense. And that's why, if nothing else, you learn about the other side. You learn. You may settle the case, you may not settle the case. But sometimes it may take one, maybe you go back for another mediation, maybe you go to the judge at some point and he or she settles it. But it's a process. And I will just say that in mediation, it's very important that both sides come to the table to negotiate in good faith. That's the most important thing.
Right. I got to believe, I come in, I have a client, and, it's really impactful. Maura, would you agree? You go in front of Judge Groner, you're doing a facilitation. It's always impactful to hear that come from a third party, and, a judge, a neutral party. And that's what you tell Judge Groner. That's what you tell the clients. I mean, you tell my client, you may come out of this most of the time. I'd say 99% of the time, you walk out of this and you're not going to be completely happy with the number, if you come to settlement. But there's closure. There's the loss. You don't have to worry about appeals. You don't have to worry about
Right.
motion calls. You don't have to worry about time, present day value. You get $1 million today as opposed to wait, 3 years from now. After that, what you lost on the 3 years you had to wait.
Yeah, and you know what the great facilitators do, like Judge Groner and of course like Amy Hathaway, is if they're taking care of the lawyers, right? Sometimes we need our clients to hear things. They're not really hearing it from us, or so there's something else. There's a message that needs to be delivered that
Right.
maybe it doesn't settle it that day, but it plants a seed in either side.
Right.
And so I find that the greatest facilitators are ones that do take care of the lawyers and say like, okay, well, what is it that you need from me in order to, get your client where you need to be?
Well, it's education. It's
Yeah.
educating. And when you have the wisdom, Judge Groner's been on the bench. He's practiced. He's tried cases. He's been on the bench. It's settled cases now in the facilitation. He knows the landscape
Absolutely.
of how a case is going to go one way or the other. And hearing it, and my client hearing it from him or Judge Amy Hathaway,
Right.
is really important, because it's repeating what we're saying in a lot of ways, but it comes from that person that has the gravitas, the experience, the wisdom, because they've seen it all.
Right.
They've done it all.
Yep.
Judge, how long have you had what's your longest facilitation, you've had, as far as like coming back days after days after days,
Well,
and ultimately resolving it?
Yeah, I've had mediations that have lasted a couple of weeks on and off. It's not every day, but
Right.
it's a couple of weeks. And, I will say that one of the reasons why a retired judge has an advantage, I think, is because I did a lot of jury trials. And one of the best things about a jury trial is you get to talk to the jurors afterwards.
Yeah.
You get to sit down with them, and the first question they're going to ask is, Judge, did we do the right thing? Did we make the right decision?
Yeah.
Every time. And I would say, you were the triers of fact, you decided. But I would say, what'd you think of witness so-and-so? Or what'd you think of witness so-and-so? In other words, if I felt that they really didn't get it the way I thought the evidence showed it, I would want to know from them what moved them one way or the other. In other words, I kept asking these questions, and what I realized after all those years, almost 20 years of jury trials, is that jury trials are unpredictable.
Yep.
You can't look at a case and say, this case is worth X.
Right.
This case is worth X plus. It may be, it may not be. And that's why people, like you said, Todd, that's why people settle their cases, because they really, they know they can't get a jury verdict that's going to be out of the park with the mediation, but they also know they're not going to get a no cause. So
Right.
that's the deal, and that's why they settle cases.
Yeah. Well, Judge, we love you,
We love
and
you. Thank you.
thanks for being on. And tell your wife we love her too. The unicorn.
We love that
You guys
unicorn.
keep doing good and helping out the people in our community.
Thank you.
Talk soon.
We'll be back next time with Behind the Bench and Maura and Todd.